There are a couple of things as well that Suraj said towards the end of the interview that shocked both James and I.
Just crossed over 2 months since the ads started. I think we've just crossed 12 or 13,000 pounds in top line revenue.
We wanted to bring somebody onto the podcast that's only recently joined so people can easily see what's possible to achieve in just a few months.
The question I'm asking myself, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this who have been through the journey and the course themselves, is why didn't I start earlier?
And some of the insights that he gave into the interview, I think is going to be a real game changer for some people listening in today.
It's all, in a very easy to follow structure and format. Like you do step 1, then you do step 2, then you move to step 3. Like you can't go wrong.
So I think it's the best way for us to show people what their life could be like if they decided to take the leap, follow their dreams, start their own business as well. So welcome to the Dropship Unlocked Podcast, your key to unlocking the secrets of high-ticket dropshipping. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. So if you're ready to learn how to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business, pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, whether you're looking to replace your income or launch a side hustle. I wrote this book as a roadmap to help you launch a low-maintenance, high-profit e-commerce business that gives you the freedom to spend more time with your family, travel the world, and work on your own terms. Ready to join us? Visit htabook.com to get your copy today. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast. With this podcast, we love shining a light on real success stories so you can feel motivated to start your own e-commerce journey. Today, we're excited to share the story of Suraj, a recent joining member of the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass, who's already making great progress with his dropshipping business. If you've ever doubted whether dropshipping will work for you, then I think this episode is going to provide some great clarity around that. Yep, I really enjoy recording these interview-style episodes as well. It's great to speak with just yourself, James, but it's also amazing when we can bring members onto our podcast as well and hear from particularly new business owners who are just getting started, exactly how their journey has been so far. It's one thing hearing from established business owners who are already up and running, but sometimes there can be a bit of a disconnect if you're just getting started and you're listening to this and thinking, well, that's all very well, but they're years down the line. What about someone who's just started? So today's episode is going to be a really good one for anyone who's thinking that and is considering getting started and wants to hear what it might be like on the other side, once they make the leap. So I think it's the best way for us to show people what their life could be like if they decided to take the leap, follow their dreams, start their own business as well. So Suraj's journey, right from the first uncertain steps, which he'll share throughout this episode, through to him gaining momentum, is a really powerful showcase of what's possible with the right guidance and mindset. Exactly. And that was something that really came through clearly in the interview. A really fantastic interview. So good to speak to Suraj. And you can see the mindset that he's got, which has really set him up for success. As you say, Lewis, we wanted to bring somebody onto the podcast that's only recently joined so people can easily see what's possible to achieve in just a few months. His success is amazing and he's set up for huge success beyond. And some of the insights that he gave into the interview, I think is going to be a real game changer for some people listening in today. Yeah, pay close attention to how Suraj overcame his initial challenges, but also the uncertainty about whether to make the leap and those pivotal moments in his early dropshipping journey, which could save you a lot of time and money. The conversation's filled with golden nuggets, whether it's about mindset or strategy or just the power of persistence and continuing through with something. So get ready to dive into Suraj's enlightening story, which I believe is going to be a game changer for many of us listening and really start to help you make your mark in online business. There are a couple of things as well that Suraj said towards the end of the interview that shocked both James and I, and I'm pretty sure you're not going to expect too. So it's an interesting one. Make sure you listen right till the end. So with that said, let's now hand you over to the interview.
So Suraj, thank you very much for joining us on the Dropship Unlocked podcast. Great to have you with us today. I know you're actually quite early into the program, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. And we can't wait to hear a little bit more about your journey, what brought you into the program, how you found it since, and some of those early results that you've seen since joining us as well. So maybe let's start at the beginning. We'll jump back in time a little bit. What were you doing prior to joining Dropship Unlocked, and what was the challenge you were facing that led you to join?
Yeah, so going back to when I first saw the ads, Lewis, on my feed saying, there's this program where you have, the host home turf advantage, and it really appealed to me because maybe about 2 years ago, I dabbled in dropshipping a little bit, and I was doing exactly what you said in your ad, which is why I think it spoke to me so much, where I was connecting into AliExpress or Alibaba with some very, very low cost products from China, shipping them. It takes 3 weeks to ship and for anyone to get anything. And we're talking $20, $30 products, very, very low margins, low cost. So I needed huge volume. And to be totally honest, I was getting the revenue. The ads were working. I was getting the sales, but all of my profits and more were being totally eaten up by the ad spend. So I was actually in a loss. So whilst the top line was looking great, I was making £4,000 or £5,000 in sales per month. It was costing me £7,000 a month, both in ads and the cost of goods and buying the products. So I was like, hang on, I don't think that's quite the right way around. So that's where I come from, and I kind of gave it up a little bit, focusing on my day job. And I also have another small business that I run. So dropshipping kind of took a back burner. I wasn't completely put off that experience, but I knew I needed something different, to try something different. And then mysteriously, your ads started showing up on my feed, and they spoke to me a lot. And I thought, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do, build a good, reputable, legitimate business, like a retail business, not just selling some low quality products for a couple of dollars online, And that's where my journey started with DSU.
Yeah, amazing. So great to hear that you had some early experiences, albeit, like you say, not as profitable as you would have hoped with the previous model from China. But great to see that you actually took that through to fruition. Because I mean, if you can make that work and get up and running, then with our model, it should be a lot simpler, right?
And that's what gave me the confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you think, well, I've done it the hard way already. Surely I can make the home turf advantage way work. When you did see the ads, what was it that specifically motivated you to join the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass? Because you mentioned that they spoke to you, but can you talk a little bit more around that? Like, what was it specifically that stood out to you?
Yeah, there was at least 3 things, Lewis, that I could probably go back to that really spoke to me and made me feel this is the right masterclass, the right community to join and be part of, to level up my own education and also implement things as I go along. The first one was that this was a UK-based person running the course and running the masterclass. And look, no disrespect to our friends and colleagues over the pond in America, but I see a whole ton of ads and courses, and maybe it's a cultural difference, maybe it's just the style and the way that we deal with things and we do business here in the UK. I just couldn't relate 100% to it. And I maybe sometimes got caught into the hype around it and the grandeur of it. And I say this with respect to you, Lewis, but yours seemed just so much more simple and down to earth. And you weren't, sitting in a Lamborghini outside, a mansion about to jump into your swimming pool to say, hey, be like me, and you could have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or 2 or 3. And I thought, this seems a bit more serious, a bit more grown up, and it wasn't sort of over-promising. It seemed like you were talking complete sense. So the first thing was that you were UK-based. The second thing, like I said, was the fact that you straight away started talking about this home turf advantage where, you don't have to do the whole dropship from China to the UK or the States and have long delivery times, because I knew that was a pain point that I was getting from my customers in my previous dropshipping experience. People were emailing me 4 days later saying, where's my product? And I knew it would still take 3 more weeks after that. And I was like, well, it was more stressful, because then for 3 or 4 weeks, I was having this customer sort of in my ear constantly, and it just wasn't great. And then the third thing was the fact that I was able to have a consultation call or a discovery call with one of your team members who explained to me a little bit about, the community that comes after the course or with the course. And I guess, well, let me go back. Maybe the fourth thing, the case studies. I saw James's interview. I saw a couple of other case studies on the interviews that you had done. I was like, these folks are like me. They're all in the UK. They've all built a UK business, limited business. There's no complications with, VAT and tax reasons and selling in dollars. We're selling in pounds. We're selling to UK customers. And that's the market I want. I want to build a UK brand, a UK business. So those 3 or 4 things are really what spoke to me up front.
Amazing. And it is awesome to hear. I mean, it sounds like you've been through a well-trodden path that I also similarly followed. When you go down the AliExpress route, there's cheaper products, but it's all the headaches. And it sounds like you experienced very similar ones to me, where it's the difficulties with customers waiting for their delivery for 3 or 4 weeks. And it's not anywhere near as enjoyable until you run a business and then you realize, actually, I can give really good service to customers and still dropship products from a supplier. So on that point of sort of enjoying this sort of type of business, how have you found the program so far? Have you enjoyed going through the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass?
Yeah, I've loved it, James. I really like the structure. I'm a man of structure and habit, creature of habit. So the fact that it's all, in a very easy to follow structure and format, like you do step 1, then you do step 2, then you move to step 3. Like you can't go wrong. Follow the formula. Don't try and second guess the system. Trust the system, as they say. And I followed it through. I was able to leverage a little bit of my experience, but something I want to call out is I did have to unlearn some of maybe the bad habits that I'd picked up in my previous dropshipping journey, where I was kind of self-taught, learning as I go, Googling things. And in a good way, the course and the videos really challenged some of the beliefs and the myths I had about how to set an ad campaign up or how to set a store up. And that was a great experience for me, because I was like, okay, I'm going to let go of everything I know, or try to let go of everything I know, and follow this different model and trust that maybe I didn't quite know what I was doing before. So that was really an enjoyable journey to unlearn and then to relearn a lot of the things that I thought I knew. I probably started off like most people, super excited, dived straight into the course, started getting through the modules, was really excited to build my store. And then where my journey kind of slowed down a little bit, and in the spirit of just transparency and being honest, where it slowed down a little bit was contacting suppliers. Obviously, with my old dropship experience, you didn't have to contact suppliers or speak to anyone. You were just clicking a button to integrate with a store on AliExpress. And so that bit I felt a little bit nervous about, but following the scripts, reading what other people are doing, hearing the success stories, and also just adapting it to suit me as well, where I just didn't feel confident enough. I started off with an email to supplier to get through the gatekeepers, and made my store look super professional before I sent it out to anyone. And then the momentum kind of carried me forward. After you get one supplier, you got another one, and then 2 became 4, and so on. So I was able to then launch my store as a minimum viable store in MVS a little bit later than I would have liked to, but nevertheless, better late than never. Got it launched, started my ad campaign, and started seeing my first sales within about 2 weeks, I would say, of my ads launching. And at that time, I had just a handful of suppliers. I think it was the minimum the course recommends. I think I had like 3 or 4 suppliers, maybe 20, 30 products there. I was like, okay, that not only gave me the confidence to know the model works, I'd proved the concept with a small number of suppliers. And I then, started to contact more suppliers. I actually went to a trade show for the niche that I'm in, that I know nothing about, or knew nothing about up until that point, and had to go to this trade show and, talk about my store, and talk about the business being relatively new, and that we were looking for new manufacturers and brands to work with. And at that trade show, I think that was the real turning point for me, because I was able to sign up another 10, 11 suppliers over that weekend. And it's things like that which really put that fire in my belly, because it felt much more like a real business than an AliExpress business model, where I was able to go out and meet real people who were running these real businesses, these real brands. Their products were all on display at the trade show. It just felt very, very real. And them seeing my website on their iPad at the stand, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, this looks like a good website. Looks like you know what you're doing." And I'm in my head thinking, "I have no idea what I'm doing." But got some good contacts, good signups, and since then it's taken off. In terms of revenue, it's just crossed over 2 months since the ads started. I think we've just crossed 12 or 13,000 pounds in top line revenue, out of which I would say there's a pretty healthy margin of about 30%, maybe averaging just a little bit lower than 30% at the moment, maybe 28, 27%. But yeah, so far so good. And the question I'm asking myself, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this who have been through the journey and the course themselves, is why didn't I start earlier? Or what was it really blocking me from contacting the suppliers? Because I would have been another 2 or 3 months ahead of where I am now had I just gotten out of my own way and started the ads earlier, or started the calls earlier to suppliers. So, no regrets at all, but definitely a message there to anyone who's listening and still in the dabbler mindset, or nervous, maybe not even dabbler mindset, just a little bit nervous and a bit overwhelmed. Start now, because 2-3 months will go by and you'll have wished you had started 2-3 months ago, like I did. So yeah, that's how I'm enjoying the course so far.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Suraj. It sounds like you're on a great trajectory already. And a couple of points that you mentioned, just to kind of jump back to, like, you mentioned one of the sticking points or the blockers for you was the going from, oh, I just need to click a button to sign a supplier through AliExpress or a platform like that, through to, oh no, I now have to show up and meet a supplier in person or call a supplier in person. And it goes from being like just an online side hustle to, no, now I have a real business. I'm a big business owner here. What would you say? Because there's lots of courses out there that will teach you kind of the way of like just plugging in a supplier and like clicking a button and, it can all work. And like you said, the very low margin model, long delivery times. We all know those models are taught out there in a plethora of different courses. But with the mentorship program, how do you feel as a person you've developed in terms of going from thinking I couldn't call suppliers to now showing up to trade shows and signing 11 suppliers in a weekend, like you said?
Yeah, the mentoring really helps with that, because you can see someone else who you can kind of relate to in terms of your life and your journey, and say, this person's like me, they live in the UK, they had a job, they've kind of gone through the normal growing up and the lifestyle in the UK. They've had a job that they didn't like. They've maybe had a different upbringing, but nevertheless, you can relate to the culture. And that sort of mentoring really appealed to me, to improve my skills and my increase my confidence in being able to speak to people offline and not sort of hide behind an email or behind an app or something like that. The mentoring helps because of the scripts that are provided. It helps in the community, just browsing and reading other people's strategies and tactics and how they approached suppliers, seeing ahead of time the types of things that I might experience with suppliers, and being able to deal with objections up front, not just in the scripts provided by the mentoring in the course, Lewis, but also from other members in the community. And dare I say, for me as a member, maybe I got more value from the other members who were also just like me, or maybe closer to my journey than you, Lewis. And I say that with the utmost respect. Maybe I got more from the members in the community, seeing what they were doing, how they were doing it, than even the scripts and the videos that were in the masterclass and in the cheat sheets. And that's not saying there was no value in those, but again, just from a relatability point of view, seeing someone who had started 2 months ahead of me, and then seeing their post saying, oh, I've started contacting suppliers, someone said X to me. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I can maybe expect that when I get to that point in the next few weeks. And I think the combination of your experience and someone's experience who's much closer to me in the community, another paying member of the community in the masterclass, combining those two sort of elements really gave me that confidence to say, okay, I've got a mentor at this level, and I've got someone else maybe a few notches below but closer to me, and I can combine the two experiences to suit me and to adapt it to myself. And that's why I like being really active in the community, because I know for a fact there's someone else like me 2 months behind me, 3 months behind me, hoping for the same thing. And it's a fascinating ecosystem, because whilst everyone there is learning from yourself and James in the videos and the mentoring that you two provide, I think there is a whole other layer of mentoring that the members provide each other almost without realizing it. And I think that's important to give back to the community. And that's why I like to stay active there. But to answer your question, sorry, that was a really long-winded way of answering your question. I think the mentoring has improved my confidence massively. It's made me feel like at least feel like this business, I know what I'm talking about. And of course, with time and experience, and you talk to enough people, you end up knowing what you're talking about. I know all the acronyms in this industry and able to talk the talk, if you will, when I'm talking with suppliers. So yeah, it's helped massively.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you cite the mentorship from other members who you might not have expected to get so much value from, but it's something that we see time and time again. And I'm always amazed by the community that we built now in the masterclass. It's just incredible. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well. But also something that struck a chord with me as well that I could relate to is before you joined the masterclass, and you're a person of structure and you like to have like a clear habit and a routine that gets you from point A to point B. Something I related to is that when you initially start to look to build an e-commerce business, then you try and self-teach yourself, and it goes through YouTube, and you try and maybe follow very different methods through different YouTube channels. And it's only when you put it into a structured program that you can actually take the individual steps day by day to get to where you need to be. So wanted to pick up on that point. And also you mentioned that the mentorship in the community, but also that I want to know what you thought about like the live calls that are available twice a week in the masterclass as well. So I know you've been able to join a few of those Q&A call sessions. How have you found that, and how has that helped you with your progress in building your business?
I think the live calls are a real game changer twice a week, and you've got the collaboration call as well, because inevitably as you go through the course, questions come up that need a bit more hand-holding to answer than a post in the community. Don't get me wrong, there's massive value in that. But sometimes when you're on the call and you don't know how to either ask the question, but someone else has a similar question and it gets asked, and the way that, James, you answer those questions kind of helps answer a whole bunch of other follow-up questions that someone might have as well. But for me, again, just being super transparent and super honest, I started joining those live calls a little bit later in my journey, but my recommendation is get on them earlier than I did, even if you hear people talking about things a little bit ahead of your journey. I know on a recent call, there were a lot of questions that may have seemed a little bit more advanced for other members, but you'll get there. So those of you listening to this, if you're on a call and something is a little bit over your head, or you think, well, I'm not quite there yet, I'm still 3 or 4 weeks at least away from that stage in the masterclass, like stick at it. Don't close your ears off to that conversation, because I promise you in 3 weeks' time something will click and you'll think, oh yeah, I remember James or another member talking about that on a call 3 weeks ago. Now I know what all of that meant, and they can connect the dots. But also from a mindset perspective, you're hearing people talk confidently and you're hearing people grow week on week on these calls, and you're hearing their updates. It gives you a bit of motivation and incentives to keep going, and in a really healthy, friendly way. And it creates a nice bit of competition and camaraderie as well, because you're like, oh, I remember, so-and-so was struggling 2 weeks ago and I learned something from him and I want to give back to that person. Or you kind of saying, oh, this person got, a big juicy sale this week. Oh, that motivated me to make sure I get some extra products added on, because I want to be sharing that in next week's call. And so I think it creates a really, really friendly environment and a safe environment to ask the questions in a live call. And then, following up in the community, the combination of the two, I think is really, really great.
Yeah, I love doing the calls, and it's interesting. I didn't join the calls when I first started until further down the line in a similar way. But even if you have just basic questions when you first get started, those Q&A calls are perfect to listen to other people's questions. But also, if you have something on your mind that's like a hurdle, you can bring that up in a Q&A call. And now, because I've done quite a lot of the Q&A calls, I almost know the questions or the obstacles that people are likely to meet. So I can sometimes prize questions out of people that they don't yet realize they have, but I can help them overcome hurdles. And it's such a rewarding process. The Q&A calls are amazing, but a lot of that comes down to the members that we've got in the community. Absolutely fantastic. So real pleasure to do those calls. Now I want to dig into your journey a little bit more now, Suraj. So in terms of like when you sort of got up and running, started making sales, how long did it take you then from when you first started running ads to when you made your first sale?
So I think it was just under 2 weeks and I made the first 2 sales. One was just over £1,000 and one was a much smaller amount of an accessory. I think someone else had bought it. But I was like, yes, this now works. And I remember exactly where I was. You may see I'm wearing a hoodie. It's a Spartan hoodie. I outside of my dropshipping life, I run extreme obstacle courses and races all over the UK and all over Europe. And I was in the car, parked up I think I was in somewhere in the West Country, in the middle of nowhere, parked up in this huge field in my training kit, ready to take on my next Spartan race. And I was sort of packing my phone away, putting it in the glove box so I can go and do my race and come back 3 hours later. As I was putting the phone in the glove box, the cha-ching went off, the famous Shopify sound, which is now very fast becoming my favorite sound in the world. And I looked at it just before I was sort of half out of the car, one leg out of the car, looked at it and I was like, I think it was £1,010 sale. And I looked at it and I just froze for a moment. And that wasn't the second sale. The first sale, I think, was £300 or £400. And I said, I just had to pause for a moment because the realization dawned on me then. Just before I was about to run this extremely grueling race, physically and mentally grueling, I was like, it took me the same effort to make £1,000 sale as it used to take me to make a $40 sale or $20 sale. Dare I say, less effort, because I didn't have to push as hard. And it's that weird dichotomy that, a higher value customer is often easier to sell to than someone looking to spend just £20 or $20. But that aside, the concept of it, I wouldn't say that's when the penny dropped. I knew this would work, but really solidified it, proved the concept, and it gave me that confidence to go and run the race, knowing that I could potentially come back to another sale. I didn't, just for transparency. I was putting it out in the universe. I was running this race. I was like, yes, go back to the car. I'll have another sale there. Universe didn't comply on that occasion, but since then it very much has. But that was the moment, James, that the penny sort of really dropped, and I was like, wow, I can do exactly what I've learned and what I've implemented here through this course, and that can really work. I hope does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. And I love hearing I love asking that question because I love hearing the different stories of where people were when they get their first sale, because they can be here, there, or anywhere, or asleep, or ill, or anything you can think of, and that's when these first sales come in. So I love to hear those stories, and fascinating that it was while you're out doing something else, which is often the way. It's just you have that proof of concept there, knowing that you front load the work, and now because you've done the work in the past, you can get on with your life doing whatever you choose to do, and the money can come in without needing you there, and that will come in more and more as well as you hire VAs and so on and so forth. So you mentioned earlier that I think you've tipped up to about £12,000, £13,000 in total sales now. And how long have you sort of been running ads for now since you first went live with your first campaign?
Yeah, so just over 2 months. So I started on the 1st of October. October, I think I made probably about £1,500, £1,700 in sales. So relative to where I am now, it seems like now a slow month, but that was the first 30 days of the ads kind of running and learning, collecting the data. I was really having to force myself to be patient and not tinker around with the ads and the configuration in the first 30 days. I know, again, in the community, see lots of people get frustrated with that process, but it will happen. And so, in that first 30 days, I think there was a maximum of like 3 sales coming to about £1,500, £1,700, give or take. Nevertheless, that broke even based on the ROAS target that I had set. And then November, it really kicked off. Ironically, not over Black Friday weekend at all. It wasn't really a great weekend for me because there wasn't that many sales in my niche. But the whole month of November, the ads had 30 days of running. There was a lot more data for them to process. And so then November took me to another 9,000 or so of sales, just under 10,000 of sales. And then December, where we are so far, a week in, I think we're already on another 3,000 or 4,000. So hoping for a good month again. But now I can see, November wasn't just a fluke or a one-hit wonder, so to speak. I can see the pattern for December is similar.
That sounds amazing, Suraj. And the trajectory that you're on, like you said, going from that kind of few thousand in the first month up to where you're at now. I mean, that trajectory continues, which there's no reason why it should not, right? With your SEO increasing, with your ad optimization, with new suppliers coming on board, with the amount of action that you're taking, continuously absorbing knowledge like a sponge, just taking action. Who knows where you're going to be at this time next year, right? So I guess the thing I'm always interested in is how this affects and impacts your wider life, because the money is great, but that is an enabler to a dream. Usually it's to, like, the reason why you did this wasn't just for the numbers on a page. It was so that those could provide you freedom to whatever it is. So I'd be interested to know, how will the success of your e-commerce business that we're on that precipice of right now, like that click base is about to really take off, how is that going to change your life? And how are you most excited, or what are you most excited about it enabling you to be able to do?
It's a great question, Lewis, and I think it stems right back to, understanding your why. Why did I invest in this course in the first place? Why was I even looking? Why was I interested in developing another income stream? I could have just stayed in my regular sort of 9 to 5, if you will, and just sort of carried on. For me, it's twofold. One is the really fun side of things, the lifestyle, and the other is a little bit more serious. I've been self-employed for a long time before my current job that I'm in right now. And I always had that insecurity about all of the boring things in life, like a pension, or like, you like health insurance and all of that. And being self-employed, I never had any of that. If I was sick, I don't get paid that day. And that was my life since when I left university, 20 or 21-ish, when you graduate. Didn't really get into the corporate world, wasn't for me. So I very quickly ended up in self-employment until my mid-30s, 3 years ago. And so, the best part of 15 years, all of my 20s and half of my 30s, I was self-employed. Sort of living kind of month to month, I guess. No, not really having enough to build a good pension pot like a lot of my friends were in corporate jobs, climbing the ladder. There was no ladder to climb. It was just my own stairs up and down my house. There was no corporate ladder for me to climb. Whilst I enjoyed that freedom and that lifestyle, a niggling part of me in the back of my mind was always like, well, I'm not in as good a financially secure position if something were to go horribly wrong. And maybe those thoughts only start coming when you hit your 30s and your knees start to hurt and your back starts to hurt when you get out of bed. In my 20s, I was loving it. So my why stems very much from a lifestyle perspective. You may see, if you're watching this on the video, I'm wearing my Formula One hat, my Spartan t-shirt. These are the kind of things I really love doing. So my hobbies, I love traveling around, going to different Formula One races, racing in Spartan events, like I said, around the world. That's part of my reason, where this e-commerce business, I want that to fund the lifestyle side of things. The more serious part of my why was very much about having an extra income stream as me and my wife start to plan a family or grow our family, and maybe not want to work 50, 60 hours a week as we get older and start to grow a family, but also to have choices. Like you said, Lewis, money is great and it's an enabler. I want this business to enable me to have a choice of whether I need to stay in my 9-to-5 job or not, or whether my wife needs to stay in her 9-to-5 job or not. And it's fine if that's what we end up doing and staying in our jobs for the rest of our careers and having this as a second income. But to have the choice, that's the key thing. It's not for us to say, yeah, make this work. So in that sense, the pressure is kind of off. And I think that's a really important piece, because if I stay in my job, it's great. I essentially now have 2 great incomes coming in rather than just one. But if I wanted to replace my job income with this, I know I have the capability of doing that in the coming months and years. So it gives me that choice and the freedom of that choice, which I think is a really important part of this puzzle of why people start their own business. Another big reason for me to try this is I do miss that self-employment lifestyle, where you don't have to report to anyone necessarily. Yes, you have customers, of course. You technically report to your customers and to your suppliers, but it's a very different relationship to, employee-employer type of relationship. And when I was growing up, I remember my parents all, both had jobs, regular 9-to-5 jobs, and very, very often, we weren't able to go on summer holidays when me and my siblings were younger, partly because it was very expensive, but secondly, because my parents couldn't always get the time off work. And I remember thinking when I was very young, in fact, there was one occasion I remember when I must have been in year 8. How old are you when you're in year 8, year 9, 12? I can't even remember. It's too long ago. However old you are when you're like year 8 sort of age in high school in the UK. And I remember, in summertime, my dad said, we're going to go to Disneyland this year. And obviously what do you do? And you're excited, you go to school and you say to all your mates, my dad said, we're going to go to Disneyland this year. And, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to have the best holiday, etc., etc. Summertime came along and unfortunately we weren't able to go because of cost and because of time off. I remember that being a big thing for me. I couldn't understand the concept of my parents had to ask somebody else who I didn't know and weren't part of our family for permission to take some time off to go on holiday with their kids. And I remember being a little bit baffled by that concept. I was like, what do you mean? Who's this person that said, no, you can't take your kids to Disneyland or on holiday or whatever it was? And I remember at that point thinking, well, smart old me, at year 8, I figured out, well, the best solution to this, I'll just never have a job. And that was my sort of motivation. Now, I did end up going through university and getting a job, but like I said, it didn't last long at all, because I think it really stemmed from my childhood that this is going to block me from taking my family on holiday or myself away. And that was a big motivator for me. It's a very underlying, deep-rooted motivator in all of this is I don't want to, have that as a blocker in my life eventually when I have a family, or even if I don't, just for me and my wife, to say, sorry, can't get a week off work this week. I just don't. I fundamentally disagree with someone else making that decision for you. So ultimately, I do want this to be able to dictate how my wife and I both have our jobs, whether it's part-time or whether it's not at all. But I think the key there, Lewis, to answer your question about my why is those 3 things. Is lifestyle, the fun side of things, going to watch Formula One whenever I can, racing around on my Spartan races, having the boring side of life taken care of, the pensions and the health insurance and all of that good stuff. But also that deep-rooted why, which is more about the freedom of choice. I think that's what this course gives.
Yeah, it's so important, and that's an amazing story that from your childhood that really has clearly shaped your decisions in later life as well. So the fact that this business model can now enable you to be able to have that freedom to never be told by someone else when you can and can't travel is incredible. I think that's a great driver to have used.
you mentioned that before you jumped into the program, you were kind of thinking about, I mean, you'd been Googling and searching your own methods on YouTube and going down the YouTube rabbit hole, as many of us do. Were there any unexpected benefits to being part of the Dropship Unlocked community that maybe you haven't even foreseen? Like if you were speaking now to the former Suraj who was thinking about joining but had that nervous apprehension, were there any things that you thought, I didn't even realize that would be something that I would benefit from being part of a community like this? But I'm so glad I did, because, you know, whether it's like you mentioned, the accountability or the camaraderie and competition, are there any other things that spring to mind that were surprising to you?
So surprising, but definitely beneficial. Like we talked about already about the live calls. It wasn't, obviously the course and stuff like that, the videos are pre-recorded, but it wasn't like, that's it. You join a course that was made many years ago, and you don't have any access to the people who made the course on an ongoing basis. So I think that a very pleasant surprise, if you will. I mean, it wasn't a surprise because I knew that was what was part of the course as part of my discovery call, but that was something that really helped me make that decision to invest in this course and in myself for this course, was that it wasn't a case of, okay, here are some videos that somebody made a while back. The fact that there is that ongoing updates to the video, there are those ongoing updates to the videos. There are, the live coaching calls. There are people sharing their experiences in real time. I think that's something that probably wasn't expecting as much of, because previously that was my experience. You buy a course for $35 to teach you everything you ever need to know about anything in the world. You're kind of overselling the world to you in a very low cost course, and you kind of get sucked in. Let's be honest. Sometimes they do really well to hook you in, and then you're totally by yourself. You ask for support, and there's no support, because it's somebody else who is living their dream and living their lifestyle, because they've made a course and it's selling on autopilot for them, and they could be anywhere in the world traveling and what have you, and not really there to create a community and provide ongoing support. That was probably the most surprising element of being a member here. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. The other thing is, whilst it's a mentoring program and it's not like a done for you program, which is other things that I remember back in the day I bought off an Instagram ad. I bought someone's done for you dropship website product, and it was like $97, and we'll build you a high converting dropship website on Shopify. All you need to do is sit back, relax, go to sleep, and sales will just come in as you sleep. Yeah, one of those. And obviously, this is absolute nonsense. That doesn't work at all. And I like the fact that it's not a done for you course at all, but it's like, we'll do it with you, if that makes sense. Like, we'll help you to implement, to execute, and do it yourself. And it sounds really cheesy, guys, and really cliche, but it is very, very much that old adage of, you give a man a fish, or you teach a man how to fish. And I think that's what this course does, because now, and we see it with other members in the community, you've taught them how to fish, to extend that analogy, because they've now gone on to their second stores and they're absolutely crushing it. So it's not just giving someone some fish. Maybe I've talked about this analogy too much now about fish, but that concept is really what I liken this community to, because that's what you're doing. You're really changing lives through this community.
We designed it in that way, and the idea of it was to have people where, if we can upskill people in the community to a point where they can then help each other later, then that is going to build an amazing supportive community of everybody that can chip in. So we knew that if we just said, hey, do it this way, don't ask why, and then later on, all the questions that people are like, well, I don't understand because I never was taught how to do it myself. So ultimately, it serves people much, much better if you can teach them the how they do it and the why, but also they can then help each other out in the community. And so, like, the middle of the night, someone posts a question, someone else who's up working late can be like, yeah, I'm online, I'll help, like, jump in. We see people jump on like Zoom calls to support each other inside the community now, just out of like almost like on a voluntary basis. It's incredible. So that camaraderie, that community spirit, that culture is really starting to come to life.
I know a little bit about your story and about your why and why you started this venture. But I think from a ripple effect and from like a tipping point, it serves you and James in a whole different way than maybe you even imagined as well. Now, why do any of us start a business? What's the definition of a business? It's to make a profit. So let's not beat around the bush. We're all in this to make some money. And that includes every member in our community. That includes you two in starting this community. There's no shame in that whatsoever, no judgment at all. But I feel like what you just said there, Lewis, that people helping each other without almost you and James being involved is a whole different layer of ripple effect that you're creating, and that will serve you and the impact that you're making to people's lives, long after we all disband and move on to other parts of our lives as well. So I think that's a really powerful thing to recognize as well, that what you're going through and what you're seeing now with the growing community and seeing people, like you said, jump on Zoom calls outside of the community and share things with each other and things that are not just instigated by James and Lewis. I think that's the real tipping point that you're seeing now, and that ripple effect will extend out generations potentially, and that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, and that's how it was designed. It's clear that it's like a long-term mission instead of like a short-term win, where the short-term win is like give someone a pre-built store, tell them the products to sell, and maybe that works for the first few months. And then as soon as anything doesn't work or goes wrong, then you've not got anything for the long term. But we want to give people skills that they will then use to build and grow more and more businesses beyond their first one, that they can grow and scale 10, 20, 30 years into the future. So you have to approach a program in a completely different way if that's what you want to teach, instead of just a quick 3-month win. So you mentioned that you've been on some other programs, other courses before that you joined the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass. So did that make you feel hesitant before you joined? Did you have that in the back of your mind? And was there anything that was holding you back? And then what ultimately got you over that hesitancy? What then got you over that to join the masterclass?
It's a great question, James. And I think naturally, everyone's had some experience in a course, or they've been burned with something, and they thought, I can buy something for, $97 or $47, and it will be the answer to everything that I need. And naturally, that does kind of burn you a little bit. So I think my apprehension was definitely there. I was maybe a little bit nervous about it because it was, I say this with respect, yet another dropshipping course that you're seeing ads for. But like I said, at the very start of this episode, there was something different about this. The fact that it was UK based, the fact that there was a discovery call up front. It wasn't just someone saying, "You're right, click here and send me to a very long landing page or sales page and click a button to buy," and never hear from them again. It felt very personal, and I think that was the difference. There's obviously the other difference, which is the pricing of this mentoring. It kind of legitimizes it, because if you charged $100 for this, maybe it would devalue it massively. And I think that's where a lot of people feel burned, because they want to believe that $100 course is going to be the answer to their prayers, because you desperately want the win, you desperately want the success, and you want to believe, you make yourself believe that I can just keep buying something cheap and cheerful, and eventually I'll make it. But the fact that there is a serious investment in this mentoring, the fact that there's the discovery call up front, really to answer questions, I think you're providing that value up front. And with a lot of other courses, you have to buy in first and hope there's value afterwards. And you kind of convince yourself, never mind, there was one nugget that I got out of it. And you end up doing that 10 times or sometimes more. And you end up with these virtual products sitting on a shelf with no one to contact, no sort of recourse, no support. And dare I say, you probably end up spending the same amount of money over a longer period of time on a bunch of smaller courses that don't dive as deep and don't go in as much detail and don't give you that support, and you can't relate to it. There's only so much you can relate to again, I say this with respect to anyone listening, but it's only so much we can relate to an American sales pitch or a course where there is no one in the UK. Everyone's in, somewhere in the States or around the world, somewhere else. And you feel like you've been, you kind of been scammed a little bit. Even if it's a legit course and there's something in there, you don't feel fully settled because there's no one to go to for support. There's no community. And I'm sure people listening will have spent more than just, the $100. There's courses out there that are able to squeeze $1,000 out of you or more and not provide the value. So I would bet that there are, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet that there are people who've spent as much, if not more, than they've spent and invested, not spent, but invested in this course through other courses. And, that's for me, the apprehension was quickly, dissolved because of the call with one of your team members, and secondly the case studies of people I could relate to, and you weren't selling the dream. You were selling a business model. You weren't selling a dream, a quick buck, and all the things that you said. I remember one part of the sales process, Lewis, was you talked about Wayfair. Wayfair, for those of you in the UK will know Wayfair very, very well. I bought a ton of stuff from Wayfair. I had zero idea that was their business model. And I think that was another one of those sort of aha moments. Like, oh, yeah, it's absolutely right. That is that model. And then you start connecting the dots and seeing around you. And like, I remember one of the videos was like about these magic glasses. You start seeing this everywhere. Like, oh my God, this is not like a new concept, but you've kind of, explained it in such a way that makes complete sense, rather than it being so pie in the sky, airy fairy, sit on a beach with your laptop and, money comes out of your laptop screen. You see those stock images, right? And I've been on the beach. No one's sitting there with a laptop, guys. Like, no one's on the beach in their swimming trunks with a laptop and money's sort of coming out of the USB port or whatever, like the stock images portray. That just doesn't happen. I hate to break it to anyone listening. It's just not real. And that's what a lot of things that we get caught up in.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I was stung as well, not so much in paying for other courses, but I was stung in the way that I followed YouTube free advice, but I ended up spending through losing ad spend. And I think a similar story as well is, you have to choose where you're going to invest your money. You're going to invest in yourself, you're going to invest in mentorship, or you're going to invest in mistakes. So it's a well-trodden path that I completely relate to as well, Suraj. And yes, also some home truths about money not coming out of a USB port. I'm yet to see it, maybe one day. But in terms of moving forward now, Suraj, so I'd like to know your plans and what you have in mind and your vision for the future. Where would you like to take your e-commerce business now? And where would you like to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years time?
Yeah, great question, James. So where I am at right now with this one store, I want to continue to tweak it and to grow it. I don't want to just sort of leave it where it is and say, hey, all right, I'm done with this one store. I know there is a lot still that I can get out of this first store. It's still technically an MVS. I'm still using the free theme on Shopify. I think it was Dawn or something like that. So I know there's a lot of opportunity still with this store. So my plan, at least for the immediate and short-term future right now going into the new year, is to continue to sign up suppliers to improve the conversion rate on the store. Now that I know that it converts, it's to start looking at ways to tweak the conversion rate, make it an easier, smoother experience for the customers to buy. Continue building relationships with the suppliers that I'm seeing really good success with, and that's not just about squeezing more margin out of them. It's just about making sure that we have a very long-term future. I'd rather stay at the margins I'm currently on with them, but be making sales with them for many years to come, rather than try to sort of be too greedy about it and say, well, now I want 10% more. It's only been 2 months, so I don't want to come across in that way. It's all about long-term relationships here with the store and a real brandable business. And then eventually, I guess, haven't quite got as far as this yet, but start thinking about a second niche and a second store. Go back to the research spreadsheet from the beginning of the course. Look at what else was on my list. Also, now that I've seen others, their experiences, and also got that extra experience myself in a real retail online store with real UK products. I can see that experience gives me insight into which niches on my list may be ones to avoid, even if the numbers match up, even if the spreadsheet and the data is telling me which way to go. There are sort of non-spreadsheet insights that you can only get from actually running ads, running a store, speaking to suppliers, seeing how that industry works, and eventually starting a second, third, fourth store and so on. But for now, still very much in that learning phase for this first store. But the long-term future, don't want to sort of jinx myself or predict it too much, too far ahead, but definitely want something that I can then say, well, this is my choice now, whether I want to stay in my job or not, and make that as a very conscious choice rather than be forced to make the choice to stay. I'd rather stay out of choice. I think that changes the whole mentality about turning up to work every day. If you have to go to work, compared to, I get to go to work because it's my choice. And I think that changes the game forever.
Yeah. It's clear that freedom is like the ultimate success, having the choice to do as you please, and how you can provide for your family in the way that you choose to is the way that ultimately you're going towards. And with this conversation and what I can see in the community and the progress you've made so far, Suraj, I've got absolutely no doubt that you'll achieve those goals and meet all of the aspirations that you've set out. You're not just having the fun, but also with your family planning that you've got up and coming. You've got so much to look forward to, and I'm sure this e-commerce business model is going to help you out a lot as you continue to put the work in that you have done so far. Yes, inspirational. And something we should add for your long-term plan is that we'd love to catch up with you again. I'm sure I speak on behalf of Lewis as well, that we'll catch up with you and find out how you're getting on in the future. But a question I've wanted to ask as well is, if you had somebody in your life that was considering starting a business, would you recommend the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass or a program to follow if they wanted to get started?
Yeah. First of all, definitely would love to stay in touch and keep sharing my journey in the community through these podcasts and just giving back to that community, which I am taking a lot out of at the moment and really getting the benefits from. In terms of recommending the dropshipping model and specifically Dropship Unlocked to others starting business, absolutely. There's nothing to suggest why I wouldn't, unless I'm being really greedy and I don't want anyone else in on the action, which is not a nice thought, right? Like, I want people around me to succeed. If someone is thinking of leaving their job or starting a second side hustle, if you will, to create another income stream, knowing how structured you make the course and how easy, and it's easy if you follow the steps, which are simple. There's a learning curve for sure, but all good things have to take you a little bit out of your comfort zone. And I think that's for that reason, I would definitely recommend Dropship Unlocked to anyone starting a business or thinking of starting a business, even if they haven't considered a dropship or direct-to-consumer online business. Maybe they're thinking, maybe they've heard someone say, "Oh, I should start an eBay business or an Amazon business." Even if they're sort of in the ballpark of dropshipping, I think I would recommend it. But even if not, if someone wants to, start a more traditional offline business, I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't say, "All right, that's great. Have a think about this. Here's another option. Consider it."
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly the mentality that we try to encourage in our community. And it just shows that you are the perfect fit for us, Suraj, in terms of coming into our community, leading with value, not pulling up the ladder. Just because you're now making sales doesn't mean you can't help someone who's just joined yesterday and is like nervous and feeling that apprehension. So any final words of wisdom to maybe the former Suraj who was thinking maybe on the fence about joining a program like this, or even just someone who's on the commute right now or on a tube or in the gym thinking, I really don't want to go into my job today and I need to do something different? Any final words of advice for them?
Yeah, it's really cliche, I'm afraid, Lewis, but it's, recognize your why, figure out what you want to do and why you want to do it. Don't do it for the sake of it, because you probably won't everything into it. That you won't go into with all your heart and your effort and your commitment. And once you are in, once you've taken that decision, be all in. Like, immerse yourself fully. Don't fall into the dabble mindset where you think, oh, I'll do a little bit here and there. Because if you treat it like a hobby, and get another cliche, I love my cliches, guys. If you treat it like a hobby, you'll probably earn like a hobby. But if you treat it like a business and you allocate some time, even if you have a job, we know most of us have jobs who start this and join the community. Allocate some time. If that means evenings and weekends, so be it. For the sake of a few months, if that's the sacrifice that you need to make, do it, and kind of be hard on yourself as well. If you're going to make the investment, invest in yourself properly, commit to it, immerse yourself in it, and kind of don't take no for an answer. Use the community. So lots of final words there, Lewis. Sorry, not just one final word, but get involved, get stuck in, because this works.
That's great. Well, you're testament to that. And as James said, we can't wait to continue to follow your journey, Suraj, and hear more from you down the line. We'd love to have you back on the podcast to share your updates in months or years to come even. So I can see you having a very successful long-term future with your new venture, and potentially even more ventures as well if you branch out. So thank you for joining us today, Suraj. It's been a really enlightening, educational conversation. I think you'll have inspired a lot of people.
Thanks, Lewis. Thanks, James. Great to be part of it.
Well, that was a fantastic interview with Suraj. Really enjoyable and amazing to see what's possible in just a few short months after starting your first e-commerce business.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great interview. Really, really great to chat with Suraj. His achievements so far have been impressive. And I've got no doubt that he will be going very far with this business. If Suraj's journey resonated with you today and you've been listening to this and you're ready to take that plunge, remember, your journey starts, just like it did for Suraj, with a single step. And that first step could be as simple as educating yourself. To set yourself on the path to your own success story, a great starting point is my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It's a comprehensive guide to starting your own high-ticket dropshipping business. So to pick up a copy of that, head over to htabook.com, grab your copy, and who knows, we might be discussing your success story on our podcast soon. Until then, keep pushing forward, and remember, your entrepreneurial journey is just one decision away. Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favor to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favorites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
Now let's answer a question that we've had in from a listener. And remember, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, all you need to do is email us. It's podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And Paul has got his question in today. And Paul actually left this question below a Spotify episode in the Q&A section. So thank you for your question, Paul. I will ask his question to you now, Lewis. So Paul's asked, what type of products do you sell?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Paul. And it's a seemingly quite a simple question, but it actually is quite complex. So we'll take you through it. Now, using my home turf advantage model of dropshipping, we sell high ticket products. So all that means is higher priced products. Now, when we define high ticket or high priced, typically we talk about products that are priced above £300. But ideally, you want to be selling products somewhere around about the £1,000 to £2,000 to £3,000 mark. And I'll explain why it works that way. By doing this opens up a variety of products that we can sell, and also ones that we can see being sold by members of our program. So some tangible examples of this might include things like high-end barbecue grills, outdoor barbecue grills, outdoor furniture set, indoor furniture sets. Think of like luxury sofas, living room tables, garden equipment, sports supplies, gym equipment, treadmills, cross trainers, office furniture, the standing desk that I'm at right now. The list goes on and on. There are a variety of different higher priced items that fit the home turf advantage model.
Now, before you decide on which product to sell, the key is passing any high ticket product idea that you might have. So any niche idea that you think, that could work, I could sell that. Before you go and make a decision based on gut instinct or feeling or passion, pass it through our niche validation criteria. So this is a list of 9 different validation criteria that we've seen. If it meets each of these, then it's very, very likely to succeed, because you're basically ruling out the chance of failure by putting it through these criteria first. So this is a process of checking if a group of high ticket products or a niche are already successful in the market, so that we could start selling those products with confidence that we can sell those things as well. So just to give you an overview, these validation criteria include things like the level of search demand. So how many people in the UK are searching for those products already? What's the average price point? Is it above 300? Is it above 500? Is it above 700? What's the price consistency? Have you got some retailers selling the items for really cheap, so it's going to become a pricing war and a race to the bottom? That's not a niche you'd want to be in. Another one is, are the suppliers themselves selling directly to consumers? If they're selling directly to consumers, then there probably needs to be a fairly compelling reason for them to buy from your website rather than just going straight to the supplier's website and buying it directly. The next is then asking yourself, are the niches that I'm considering going into dominated by global brands and big corporates who are very unlikely to want to work with us as a beginner and supply us as one of their retailers? So if I say I'm going to go and sell laptops, for example, I'm unlikely to be signing Apple or HP or Sony as my suppliers anytime soon. So that's probably not a niche that we would recommend going into for that criteria. And then finally, the number of brands that are available. If you pin all of your hopes on a niche that maybe has 3 brands, you only have 3 chances to sign a supplier. Whereas if you've got 20 different options, you're much more likely to sign a few suppliers who can make all the difference to your business. So once you've put your niche ideas through our 9 different data criteria validation points, then you can be confident that the high ticket niche you've chosen meets those criteria, and then we can start selling those products and scaling your business to high levels of profitability. Now, if you want a full guide on how we do this, because that was really just a whistle-stop tour of the 9 criteria, we break this down in much, much more detail, then you can head over to episode 11 of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. Maybe line that one up after this one. That's titled The Full Guide to Dropshipping in the UK, and I think you'll get a lot of value from that one too.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lewis. And there are thousands of different ideas, different niches, different products that fit into our criteria. So be creative and you'll come up with a fantastic idea, put it through the criteria, and then you've got a business set up on fantastic foundations for great success. So thank you, Lewis, for your answer to that. We're also going to highlight a review that we've had in from a listener as well. So thank you to jmore74 for leaving a review on a recent podcast. And he said, really enjoying these episodes, something interesting each week. And I want to take this journey to the next level. And I need to book in my call. So thank you for your review.
Yeah, thank you so much for your review, Jay Moore. You do need to book in your call. Absolutely. We can't wait to speak with you. We're really glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast as well. So if you've also enjoyed the podcast today, then maybe consider sharing Suraj's motivating story with someone in your circle. We were just looking through the stats of our podcast recently, and we can see that the platform that gets the most shares for the podcast is WhatsApp. That's where you guys are sharing the podcast the most. So perhaps think, is this a great episode to share with somebody close to you who's maybe considering starting their own business? If not, maybe share it with them on WhatsApp. Also, we'd love to get your feedback as well. So feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, just like Jay Moore did today. And for our YouTube audience, your comments below are always very welcome. So please do leave us a comment. Your thoughts and opinions could very well be highlighted too in our next episode.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found the discussion both inspiring and entertaining.
If you're ready to begin your own high-ticket dropshipping journey, then here's what to do next. I've taken all of the years of my own experience, both in running my e-commerce businesses and teaching hundreds of others how to do the same, and I've condensed it all into my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It's your comprehensive guide designed to help you create your own e-commerce business. And you can grab your copy today at htabook.com. Stay connected by subscribing to the podcast. This way you'll never miss an episode packed with valuable insights. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review. Your feedback motivates us and we love sharing our favourite reviews on future episodes. And thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you and we look forward to sharing more high-ticket dropshipping insights with you on our next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.